A sloth, a donkey, and a curious human. Send a prompt and see what they're doing. One hits record with a question on his mind. Two brothers pick it up, see what they find. Corn takes his time, Herman's got the facts. Back and forth, they never hold back. My weird prompts, come on in, that's where we begin. My weird prompts, glad you're here.
This episode was generated using artificial intelligence. Please verify facts.
So, Herman, I was looking at some of the latest developments in the artificial intelligence space this morning, and it struck me just how much of our daily conversation on this show starts with a single platform. It is this strange utilitarian corner of the internet that seems to hold the keys to the kingdom of modern science. I am talking, of course, about arXiv.
Ah, the legendary archive.org, but with an X. It is funny you bring that up because our housemate Daniel was actually asking about this the other day. He was looking at some of the research papers we cite and noticed that they all seem to live on this website that looks like it has not been updated since the Clinton administration. It is a bit of a shock to the system for someone used to the slick, high-gloss interfaces of modern social media or corporate landing pages.
It is a total paradox, right? You have the most sophisticated technology on the planet, things like multimodal transformers and autonomous agents that are literally changing the course of human history, and they are being disseminated through a portal that looks like a 1991 graduate student project. But Daniel's question went deeper than just the aesthetics. He was wondering about the mechanics of it. Why is it the central nervous system of AI? And could someone like him, an independent researcher and tinkerer, actually get something published there?
Those are the exact questions we need to tackle today. And Herman Poppleberry here is ready to dive into the weeds. This is episode 1090 of My Weird Prompts, and we are going deep on the preprint culture that defines the modern scientific era. We are going to look at why a single PDF upload on this site can shift the valuation of a billion-dollar company overnight.
It really is the arXiv effect. If a researcher at Google DeepMind or OpenAI drops a paper on a new transformer architecture or a breakthrough in reinforcement learning on a Friday night, the entire industry pivots by Monday morning. Engineers at startups halfway across the world are already trying to replicate the results before the authors have even had their morning coffee. But before we get into the power it holds today, we should probably talk about where it came from. It did not start with AI, did it?
Not at all. To understand arXiv, we have to go back to August of 1991. A physicist named Paul Ginsparg was working at Los Alamos National Laboratory. Back then, the scientific world moved at the speed of the Postal Service. If you were a physicist and you wrote a paper, you had to physically mail photocopies of your manuscript to your colleagues. These were called preprints because they were the versions of the paper that existed before they were formally published in a peer-reviewed journal.
I can only imagine the lag time on that. You finish a breakthrough, you put it in an envelope, you stick a stamp on it, and you wait weeks for someone to even read it, let alone respond. If you were in a fast-moving field, your work could be obsolete by the time it reached the other side of the Atlantic.
It was slow, it was expensive, and it was incredibly exclusionary. If you were not in the inner circle of the top universities, the Ivies, or the big European labs, you might not get those mailers for months. You were essentially locked out of the cutting edge. Ginsparg saw the early internet and realized he could automate this. He created a centralized server where physicists could upload their papers and others could download them instantly. It was originally called the xxx.lanl.gov archive.
A slightly unfortunate name in hindsight, perhaps. I imagine that caused some confusion with early web filters.
Very much so. It eventually rebranded to arXiv, using the Greek letter chi for the X, which is why we pronounce it archive. It moved to Cornell University in 2001, where it has stayed ever since. But the shift that really matters for us is when it moved beyond high-energy physics. It became the home for mathematics, nonlinear sciences, and eventually the juggernaut that is computer science.
And that is where the explosion happened. I mean, as of today, March 11th, 2026, arXiv is receiving at least 15,000 submissions every single month. It is a fire hose of information. But let's address that aesthetic point Daniel made. Why does it look like that? Why do most computer science lab homepages look like they were coded on a Commodore 64?
It is a point of pride, Corn. It really is. In the computer science world, especially in the more theoretical and academic wings, there is a deep-seated culture of function over form. These researchers spend their lives thinking about efficiency, data structures, and machine readability. To them, a flashy user interface with heavy images and JavaScript is just bloat. It is noise that gets in the way of the signal.
There is also the LaTeX factor, right? For those who do not know, LaTeX is the document preparation system that almost all these papers use. It is spelled LATEX, but pronounced LaTeX.
Right. It is not a word processor like Microsoft Word where you see what you get. It is a markup language. You write your paper in plain text with code that tells the system how to format equations, bibliographies, and citations. The beauty of LaTeX is that it is incredibly precise for mathematics, and it is very stable. A document written in LaTeX 30 years ago will still compile perfectly today. Because arXiv relies on users uploading their LaTeX source code, the platform stays anchored to that technical, text-heavy ecosystem.
So it is not that they cannot make it look better, it is that they do not want to. They want it to be grep-able. They want it to be easily indexed by machines. It is about the data, not the design. If you are a researcher, you are not there to be entertained. You are there to find a specific proof or a specific benchmark.
Precisely. And that stability is why it works. If arXiv suddenly became a heavy, JavaScript-filled modern web app, it might lose the very thing that makes it a reliable archive. We talked about this a bit back in episode 741 when we discussed the Internet Archive and the idea of a digital Library of Alexandria. Sometimes the oldest, simplest tech is the most resilient because it has the fewest points of failure. It is the digital equivalent of a stone tablet.
That makes sense. But let's get into the meat of how it actually works, because this is where the misconceptions start. This is something people often get wrong, especially students. Is arXiv a peer-reviewed journal?
No, and that is a crucial distinction that everyone needs to understand. arXiv is a preprint server. In a traditional journal, you submit a paper and then several anonymous experts in your field spend months, sometimes years, tearing it apart, asking for revisions, and eventually deciding if it is worthy of publication. On arXiv, that process does not exist in the same way. The goal is speed and open access, not the slow-motion gatekeeping of traditional academia.
So, is it just a free-for-all? Can I just upload my grocery list and call it a breakthrough in nutritional logistics? Or maybe a manifesto on why sloths should run the world?
Not quite. There is a moderation system, but it is important to realize it is not peer review for scientific validity. It is a check for relevance and basic quality. They have a team of moderators and automated tools that scan for things like plagiarism, proper formatting, and whether the topic actually belongs in the category you chose. They are looking for scholarly intent. If you submit something that is clearly nonsense or a blog post disguised as a paper, it will get rejected.
And then there is the endorsement system. That seems to be the real gatekeeper for independent researchers like Daniel.
That is the big one. If you are a new author and you are not affiliated with a major research institution that is already in the system, you need to be endorsed. This means an established author on arXiv, someone who has already published several papers in your specific category, has to basically vouch for you. They have to click a button saying, yes, this person is a real researcher and this paper is legitimate.
That feels like a bit of a hurdle for someone like Daniel. If he is working from home in Jerusalem, building these incredible AI pipelines, but not sitting in a lab at MIT or Stanford, how does he navigate that? It feels a bit like a catch-22. You need to publish to be an author, but you need an author to publish.
It is a hurdle, but it is not an impossible one. The goal of the endorsement system is to prevent the platform from being flooded with crackpot theories or low-quality spam. For someone like Daniel, the path usually involves networking in the open source community. You share your work on platforms like GitHub or Twitter, you engage with the community, you participate in competitions on Kaggle. Eventually, someone with an arXiv track record sees the value in what you are doing and gives you that digital nod.
It is interesting because this setup has created a completely different culture than traditional academia. In the old world, the journal was the final word. In the AI world, the arXiv upload is the starting gun. It is the move fast and break things version of science.
It really is. Think about the paper. Attention is all you need. It was uploaded to arXiv in June of 2017 by researchers at Google. That paper introduced the transformer architecture, which is the foundation of every large language model we use today. It did not wait for a 2-year journal review cycle to change the world. It hit arXiv, and within weeks, every serious AI researcher was tearing into it. If they had waited for traditional peer review, the AI revolution might have been delayed by years.
That speed is intoxicating, but it has a downside. If there is no formal peer review, how do we know what is actually good? How do we filter through those 15,000 papers a month? I mean, I am a sloth, Herman. I cannot read 15,000 papers. I can barely read 15.
This is where the secondary ecosystem comes in. Because arXiv is so central, other people have built the filtering layers on top of it. You have things like arXiv Sanity Preserver, which was a project started by Andrej Karpathy. It uses machine learning to recommend papers based on what you have liked before. You have newsletters like The Batch or Import AI, and podcasts like ours that act as a decentralized peer review board. The community decides what is important in real time by citing it, forking the code, and talking about it.
It is like a market-driven version of science. The cream rises to the top because people actually use the code and cite the results, not because 3 anonymous reviewers said it was okay. But that brings us to Daniel's meta question. He wants to know if he could submit a paper detailing the production pipeline of my weird prompts.
I love this question because it touches on what actually constitutes computer science research. If Daniel just wrote a blog post saying, "Here is how I use these 3 tools together," that probably would not make the cut. But if he framed it as a research paper on automated content generation pipelines, or perhaps the taxonomy of AI-driven metadata, tagging in long-form audio production, he might have a shot.
We actually did a whole episode on taxonomy, episode 1038, and how it is the secret architecture of the AI age. If he could demonstrate a novel way of organizing and retrieving information for a project of this scale, something that handles thousands of hours of dialogue and maintains consistency, that is absolutely something that could fit into the Cs.hc category, which is human-computer interaction, or maybe Cs.ai.
To get onto arXiv, you have to contribute something new to the body of knowledge. It could be a new algorithm, a new way of measuring something, or a unique architectural approach to a complex problem. The fact that our podcast uses a multi-stage LLM pipeline to generate dialogue that maintains a consistent character voice over thousands of episodes, that is a non-trivial engineering challenge. If he documents the latency, the error rates, and the prompt chaining logic, that is a technical contribution.
So he would need to format it in LaTeX, which I know he would actually enjoy because he is a bit of a nerd for that kind of thing. He would need to find an endorser. And he would need to ensure the methodology is rigorous. It is not just about the result. It is about showing your work in a way that others can reproduce.
Reproducibility is the keyword there. That is the soul of arXiv. When you upload a paper, you are often expected to provide a link to your code or your dataset, usually on GitHub. If Daniel provides a repository that allows other researchers to replicate his pipeline and test his findings, he is doing real science. He is moving from tinkering to research.
I think it would be hilarious if there was a formal academic paper about us, the Poppleberry brothers, a case study in synthetic personality maintenance and recursive dialogue generation.
Hey, we are very real to our listeners, Korn. But you are right, the meta aspect of it is fascinating. It brings up this idea of the independent researcher as a legitimate force. We are seeing more and more of this in 2026. People who are not part of big tech or big academia, but who have access to these powerful models and are doing experimental work in their own time. arXiv is theoretically open to them, provided they can clear that initial bar of the endorsement.
It feels like a democratization of knowledge, which connects back to the idea of a digital library of Alexandria. arXiv is a part of that. It is preserving the cutting edge of human thought in a format that is meant to last. But it also creates this massive information overload. If you are a student today, how do you even start? You go to the arXiv homepage, and it is just a wall of text and technical jargon. It is intimidating.
That is where the practical takeaways come in. If someone is listening and they want to start tapping into this fire hose, what is the best way to do it without getting drowned?
My first piece of advice is to use an aggregator. Do not just go to the arXiv homepage and start scrolling. Use something like Hugging Face Daily Papers or the arXiv Sanity site I mentioned. These tools use social signals and AI to highlight the papers that are actually gaining traction in the community. It is like having a curator for the fire hose.
And what about for someone who wants to be a creator, not just a consumer, like Daniel?
For the creators, the first step is learning LaTeX. It is the language of the realm. If you submit a paper that looks like a Word document, you're going to have a very hard time being taken seriously. There are great online editors like Overleaf that make it much easier to get started with templates. It handles all the formatting so you can focus on the content.
And the endorsement? How do you actually get that digital nod?
That is about community. If you have a project you think is worthy of arXiv, start by writing it up as a technical blog post or a white paper. Share it on forums where researchers hang out. Places like the local llama subreddit or specialized Discord servers. If the work is good, the endorsement will follow. It is a reputation-based system, which I think is actually quite healthy. It forces you to engage with the people who are already doing the work.
It is a bit like the old guild system in a way. You have to prove yourself to the masters before you are allowed to hang your shingle in the town square. It is a digital guild of scientists. And while it has its flaws, it has allowed for an incredible acceleration of research. We are seeing breakthroughs in medicine, climate science, and of course AI, happening at a pace that was unimaginable 30 years ago.
I do wonder, though, if it is sustainable. As AI starts writing its own research papers, or at least heavily assisting in them, are we going to see that 15,000 papers a month jump to 50,000, or 100,000? We are already seeing paper mills where people use LLMs to churn out low-quality research just to pad their resumes.
That is the big concern for 2026 and beyond. We are already seeing a lot of noise on the platform. Some people call it the arXivification of science, where everyone is rushing to be first rather than being thorough. There is a risk that the quality control, even at a basic moderation level, could break down under the sheer volume of AI-generated content.
It reminds me of our discussion in episode 816 about the evolution of human order. We keep building these systems to organize our knowledge, but the volume of knowledge eventually threatens to overwhelm the system itself. If we need an AI to read the papers that an AI wrote, are humans even in the loop anymore?
Right. We might need a new layer of AI moderators just to manage the AI-generated research. It is a bit of a recursive loop, but for now, arXiv remains the gold standard. It is the one place where you can find the actual source of truth before it gets filtered through PR departments or simplified for news headlines. If you want to know what a model can actually do, you do not look at the marketing video, you look at the arXiv paper.
You look at the math, you look at the benchmarks, and you look at the limitations section. Especially the limitations section. That is often the most honest part of the paper, where the researchers admit where the model fails.
So, to answer Daniel's question, yes, he could absolutely submit a paper on our production pipeline. It would just need to be framed as a contribution to the field of automated media or human-computer interaction. It would be a lot of work, but it would be a fascinating exercise in seeing how the academic world views the kind of work we are doing here in Jerusalem.
I think he should do it. Imagine the citations. Poppleberry et al., 2026. It has a nice ring to it. We could be cited in the next big breakthrough paper from OpenAI.
Although, as a sloth, I might find the peer review process a bit too fast-paced for my liking. I prefer a review cycle that lasts a few decades.
And as a donkey, I am probably too stubborn to listen to the reviewer's comments anyway. Reviewer number 2 says my methodology is flawed? Well, reviewer number 2 is a jackass.
Pot calling the kettle black there, corn. But seriously, the significance of arXiv cannot be overstated. It is a testament to the power of open access and the idea that knowledge should belong to everyone, not just those who can afford a journal subscription. It is a little bit of the 1990s internet that has survived into the mid-20s, and I hope it never changes its look.
Me too. Long live the plain text and the blue hyperlinks. It is a reminder that at the end of the day, science is about the ideas, not the packaging. It is about the pursuit of truth. even if that truth is delivered in a 1991 graduate student project format.
Well, I think we have covered a lot of ground here, from Paul Ginsparg's mailers in Los Alamos to the potential for a My Weird Prompts academic paper. It is a lot to chew on.
It really is. And if you are listening to this and you have ever dived into an arXiv paper because of something we mentioned on the show, we would love to hear about it. Or if you are an independent researcher yourself, tell us about your experience with the endorsement system. Did you find a mentor? Did you get that digital nod?
You can get in touch with us through the contact form at myweirdprompts.com. And while you are there, you can search our entire archive of over 1,000 episodes. We have covered everything from the deep history of databases to the future of digital preservation.
And hey, if you've been enjoying these deep dives, do us a huge favor and leave a review on your podcast app or on Spotify. It really does help other curious minds find the show, and it keeps the Poppleberry brothers in business.
It genuinely makes a difference. We see every review, and we appreciate the support more than we can say. It keeps us motivated to keep digging into these weird corners of the internet.
We really do. This has been another episode of My Weird Prompts. I am Corn Poppleberry.
And I am Herman Poppleberry. Thanks for joining us on this journey through the digital archives. We will be back soon with another prompt from Daniel.
Until then, keep digging deeper. The truth is usually hidden in a PDF somewhere.
Goodbye, everyone.
See ya!
This episode was generated using Gemini Flash 3. Text-to-speech engine was Chatterbox.
Thanks for listening to our show, My Weird Prompts, where our thoughts go from slow takes to facts on cue. We change and follow through. My Weird Prompts, that's the close from sloth